G'day guys, this is going to be episode 4. So what I'm going to look at installing today, if it needs it, is some diff breathers. I haven't found where all the breathers go to yet. If the factory breathers are at a good enough height, then I won't bother installing these aftermarket ones because it's just work for no reason. So if I can find all the breathers and trace them out so I know where they come from and where they go to, that'll help me decide whether I want to install some aftermarket ones, because I could just be wasting my time. So what I've got here is BRC 4-port. So it comes with 2 elbows, 4 connection points that go into your diffs and transmission. These are threaded entries. They've got sealant. You don't need any thread tape. And you got your 4 pushing connectors here already mounted, thread tape on them. You got your filters. In here you've got a 6x40, 50 odd, which goes through here. You got a nylock nut M6. So you can drill this into your engine bay somewhere. That'll be that. So I didn't actually pay for this, it fell off the back of a truck, but I'll put the price up and I'll add it to the build cost and I'll add any weights that I put in. So this is the rear diff of the car, and you can see the breather hose there. I've got no tray on at the moment, so it's easy to show you. That comes out here. So height wise, I can't measure it at the moment because the car is actually lifted. So it wouldn't be an accurate reading. It's on stands. And also these brackets that I've made up, because my tray is removed, might alter how the fuel filler sits. But roughly, assuming it won't change too much, I would say it is just beneath the indicator line. The indicator line being here, about 100mm down to the diff breather. 150 we'll say. The reason I'm using the indicator as a guide is so I can check how high it can get in the engine bay. So by mounting the diff breather kit in, we could raise it by 250, 300mm, depending on where we can mount our breather kit in the engine bay. So I think it's definitely worth raising that rear diff breather. So on the passenger side of the car, these 3 bent hoses here, or pipes, they run into hoses. Pretty sure these are for the front diff, which I think is this one, which I can sort of see running in that direction, and then your transfer and transmission. If that is the case, I can't see any point in rerunning them. It actually sits in line, if not higher than the alternator on the other side, and if your alternator's underwater, you're in trouble anyway. So you're not going to gain any more than 50mm. Say if I was to bolt the new diff breather housing in here, you're not going to gain much out of your time and effort in cutting and rerunning hose for these. So I might leave these and do the rear diff only. But first I want to make sure that these are going to where I think they're going. So I need to trace them out first before I can decide. So it's really hard to pick up on camera through all these pipes, but I'm fairly certain that this goes down to the front diff. In order to assist me tracing this out to the front diff, I'm going to remove the factory bash plates here. So 2 17s and then 4 15s at the back. Alright guys, so that's the back of the car. They're my massive legs. And here we got the front diff. You see the diff breather up here? That hose comes through here. You can see that. Then if we jump to the other side, this line comes down, connects to that rubber hose. So I'm not sure if this will come through in the edit, but if I can get the camera angle right, up there is that line that connects to this rubber hose at the front diff, and that goes up to that curved hook fitting in the engine compartment. Because of that being so high, I'm not going to redo the front diff because it's already in a good location. At the moment, it looks like we're just doing the rear diff. So back in the engine bay here, this bottom one, that's the one that went to the front diff. Not sure if you can get a... This is your transfer case that runs to rear diff. And obviously in front of that is your transmission. I found one of these breather hoses, which is the transfer case breather hose. I've not found the transmission breather hose yet, but I'm hoping to. So that's the front of the car down there. Left hand side, this cable loop from the actuator. You run your hands along just past this bolting point where the two faces meet. In the top left corner, you'll feel the rubber hose. I'm holding it right there. That's really poor access. If you want to take that off, you'll be ripping it off blind and then trying to get your tube over the little spout that comes out of the transfer case. So without being able to view that, I can't tell whether it can be screwed out successfully or not. And I'm pretty sure it goes in the engine compartment up high already, so if that's the case, I'll just leave it as it is. Just quickly, this is the transfer again. This is where I was reaching over. If you come a bit forward, this rubber hose here, that is that hose that I was grabbing to the transfer case. So you can also see it up there, hopefully. So that is what I am tracing to the front of the car. You might be able to see down there where it connects. I can't fit my arms in there. I can't trace it back. I can't find where the automatic transmission breather connects to the automatic transmission bell housing. So physically I can grab the front diff, the rear diff and the transfer case, but the only one I'm going to run the extra diff breather from is the rear diff because it's down low. These three up high, there's no point redoing. Alright guys, so we're just having a look at an online manual here. This is the Haynes manual. Using this to clarify that this last breather pipe is indeed for the transmission. So you can see in the image there, the arrow pointing to number 1 with the highlighted text underneath that says transmission breather. So that is your differential, transmission and transfer case breather. Unfortunately, I couldn't trace it back to the transmission to check the other end, but I'm happy enough with the fact that it does go there. And here, just in case you wanted to see the front diff breather, that is the front diff that we were looking at before. So on the transfer case, number 3 there is the breather hose. So that's the left hand side of the transfer case. Now that is where my arm was reaching up before, following that cable loom. The transmission is there, but I can't see a breather hose. I wasn't sure if this here was a little breather, but then that wouldn't make sense with the actual pipe mounted in the engine bay, having a hose running back towards the transmission. Possibly just above the number 1 there, I thought maybe there was another breather that popped up and was cable tied to the inside of the transfer case breather, so we couldn't see it. When I traced that back with my hands, I could only feel the one hose there. So I'm still not sure where the transmission breather connects to. Alright guys, so in order to get an accurate measurement of how much weight we're adding and subtracting from the car, I'm going to add this breather kit in its complete form, everything it comes with. I'll weigh it now, I'll weigh it again at the end, we'll be able to see the difference. The difference will be what's installed on the car. Anything I take off the car, I will then weigh on here, and that will be subtracted from that weight. So breather kit, box and all, 668 grams. Do it twice for good luck, 666 grams. So we've somehow lost 2 grams there. I don't know where they went. I'll try and find them later, but for now, it's not important. As it stands at the moment, the only diff that I'm doing is the rear diff. So I'm still going to install a 4-port in the engine bay. If anyone can tell me why it might be worth redoing the other ones, then I'm open to the idea. I've got the 4 ports here. And if anyone knows where I can locate the automatic transmission breather on the transmission side, then I'd love to hear it, because I'd like to be able to have a look at it to make sure the breather is connected over the port securely. I'm not sure if it can be done without dropping the transmission somehow. If these things are prone to coming off, the transfer of the transmission or the front diff, also again I'd like to know, because then I can just run the tubes up to here. So if anyone has any experience with that, just let me know in the comments. I'm going to mount it in a specific spot and I'll show you why. I've also got to fit in the coming days this from Direction Plus oil separation kit. Now this is a ProVent 200 catch can, and a pre-fuel filter. They go on the same brackets. And I had a look at the instructions just so I don't have any crossover here, but it looks like they will fill this space here, which means I don't have a lot of good places to bolt this diff breather port. Now the style that they've gone for here keeps the width of it down because they've gone 2-2 instead of 4 long. This protective case around the original fuel filter, which is this in here, it's close to the original breathers. It is made of metal, so I can drill and nut and bolt with a supplied M6 bolt. And it's up nice and high. I'll try and mount it on here somewhere. This part here, pretty much as it sits there, the bonnet will still close as long as there's enough clearance around here for all of this on the other side. I don't want any rubbing, so I'll suss that out and see how I go. First things first, removing this line, putting in the new fitting, and then running the hose to the front of the car. I'll cable tie it up along with some existing runs of cable, so I know that it's not going to be too hot or prone to rubbing. The old diff breather comes down from the fuel filler where it vents. This is a 14mm. The new fitting that goes in is a 12mm. There you go, breather disconnected. The new fitting that we're putting on already has sealant around the thread, so you don't have to worry about putting anything on that. I think most kits these days come with sealant around the thread. Get it in nice and square, make sure it's not cross-threaded. There you go, job complete. If you want your diff breathers to be lower than they were before and not very secure, that's all you have to do. But if you want to do it a little bit better, you can tighten it up with a 12mm and run some hose as well. Alright, so eventually you're going to have the body of the nut section bottom out on the diff housing. You don't go any tighter than that really. You can nip it up, but remember that this thread is sealed the whole way through, and you've got about 8 or 9 threads of engagement there, so it's going to have a really good seal. You don't want to crack that. Now we run the hose in. Alright guys, so at the front left of the vehicle, this is where the existing diff breathers are. Running the hose from the top down, following the diff breather lines as best as I can. They go towards the transfer case, because if I can follow that line the whole way, then I know it's safe. So that's basically it, and I'll jump under the car. I've come down the left hand side of the car here and decided to follow these cables and fuel lines. So this is it here, it's not tied in yet. Jumped onto the chassis cable loom here, the split conduit, and that's what I'll tie it back to. So I've come through this side here. I've taken out the original breather, just run it through the clamps that were there for it. So it runs along here, through there. Sort of semi-holds it in, but I'll cable tie that up properly. This is where I run this in with a bit of slack to match what the old line looked like, and I just press it into here. This is just a press-in fitting. It locks itself in. Alright guys, sorry for any weird reflections, but I've got a broken screen protector on the GoPro at the moment. When you push this in, you just want to push it in basically as far as you can get it. It locks itself in. If you ever want to release it, you press down on the blue collar and pull it out. Now I've run it the same way as the original diff breather. I've put little cable ties to hold it in because it's not the same size obviously. And I've probably left twice as much slack compared to what was on the original. I've used the same clamps to run over to the fuel filler before going inside, tying to this cable loom. So you don't need to go crazy, but every 300 or 400 mil, just whack it tie on. You can see I've tied it here to this bracket. Just tie it in there, tie it again here, and tie it again once more as high as I could reach up the engine bay. There's only one mounting hole in this, which actually works in my favour now, so I can get it close to the edge, get it away from this airline. I won't have anything blocking them over here, so that makes it quite comfortably the highest thing in the engine bay. That's roughly 50 mil above the existing ports. I'm going to drill this and paint it, and I'm going to let it dry. After it's dry, we'll cut this and fit it and put the last 2 cable ties in, and that's pretty much it. This is the only paint I had in the house. It is allegedly a paint and primer. Couple drill bits and a drill. Just sticking this behind so I don't accidentally drill into the air intake, which is behind there. So that would be a shit way to start the weekend. You might be able to see I've marked 2 holes here. The top one would be for the back mounting. This one would be for the mounting it on the inside here, which is, at the moment is my preference. So I'm going to drill this one out and then if I find any issues later, I can move it to there. But I won't drill that one at the moment. I'll just drill the one that I think is going to work the best. Before I paint it, I'm just going to check that that fitment will work. I've drilled the hole in the right spot and everything, so I drilled it on the angle so the hoses in the bottom will fit in nicely. If I drilled it on the straight bit, the hose entries at the back towards this plate would have been really difficult to get in because it bends out. So I think I'm pretty happy with that. I'll just paint it and then mount it. I've left that paint to dry overnight. I'm adding a washer to the mix, but it does not come with a washer. So the bolt that's supplied is stainless steel, A270, that's stainless steel. They can sometimes stick. I'm just going to put anti-seize on it so it doesn't. It has a nylock nut anyway, so it's not going to vibrate loose. It's irrelevant, it won't come off, don't worry. So buy 100 pack of these NITRILE gloves because you can just throw them away when you're doing dirty stuff like this. Don't use good work gloves. It's a lesson I've learnt the hard way. If I drop this nut, it is game over. I think I will retire from life. So being an M6, that's a 5mm head for the Allen key and a 10mm for the nut, is normally the case. We're going for a 10mm spanner here because the socket head didn't fit at the back. So I'm going to whack 2 or 3 cable ties on this line following the existing diff breathers, and then it will duck under this bracket and go into here, so everything's nice and protected. I'll probably have to remove this to do the pre-fuel filter and catch can because I need to tap into the fuel lines, but it's not too hard, it's just one bolt, and that's given me all the space out here still. The other advantage here is nice and protected. Drilling on the angled part of this plate is more difficult, but it helps get these hoses off the back at the end. If I drilled it up higher, those hoses would have been faced with this indent and the back hoses would have been basically inaccessible. Tie this, chop this, that's pretty much job done. Now I'm only using the rear diff at the moment, but in the future I might do the front diff and the transfer case. With the transfer case, I think I would have to use this line to tap into the existing line. I don't think I'd have good enough access to actually unscrew the port and screw in the new fitting because I wouldn't be able to see that I was doing it correctly, and it's really hard to get your hands up there. If I ever do it, it will just be this line tapping into the original line. Automatic transmission, I cannot locate it. Alright guys, so here's the final look at how I've run it. I've run it into the rear left port there so it doesn't block any further breathers that I want to put in. So leave a nice bit of length so it's nowhere near the bracket itself. 2 ties on the existing breather line. And the next tie down on that split conduit, keep it away from that bolt there, it's tied to the split conduit, and then it goes down underneath the car where I started tying it back. So now I'm just going to weigh the remains of the box. I used up all the cable ties. From memory, it was originally 660 something. Might put it on a normal metric system because the imperial system's retarded. 325 grams. The difference between that 325 and the 600 odd is what we've added to the car, minus the weight of this. I'll just zero that. This is all I've taken out of the car. 161 grams. Well, you can figure out what we've added to the car, which is not a lot, to be honest. Alright, so that's the diff breathers on the BT-50 and Ford Rangers. To be honest, the rear one's the only one worth looking at, and even that, being up where the fuel filler was, it's actually quite high off the ground. So I ran it in anyway, just to get it 150, 200mm higher, and I wanted the hardware mounted just in case I decide to do the front diff, the transfer case or the transmission. So I don't plan on doing any big water crossings anytime soon, but it's just one of those future-proofing things that's relatively cheap. You don't have to get this one, there's plenty of good ones out on the market. Yeah, diff breathers. Pretty exciting stuff, diff breathers. Thanks for watching. On the threads already, so you don't need any tape thread. Boop. I'll just stop that recording, it's a waste of data, you get the idea. But I'll put up a price of this quit